Now you are. Okay. So welcome everybody to the 2024 lecture series, our third speaker tonight, and I'll remind you a little bit about what we are trying to do this fall semester with our lecture. We entitled it, quote, "The Breadth of Architecture, Practice and Work," end of quote. And the intention of this conversation, if you wish, is to raise awareness and invite discussion about the multiple and different ways to practice architecture. The four speakers in our series allow us to explore an array of options. 5 weeks ago, as you remember, Marshall Brown challenged us to think of architectural design as an envisioning tool, a fiction, as he often says, to lead society and culture into a different future. 3 weeks ago, John Marks from Form 4 Architecture in San Francisco demonstrated how a successful corporate practice can retain and in fact advance a poetic and artistic vision of architecture. Tonight, Finnish architect and Helsinki-based architect, Professor Jenni Reuter, will share with us her international recognized firm's inspiring work in the third world, maybe even more, but at least that. And this is work that's socially and culturally progressive and so much in line with our Catholic values of human dignity, beauty, and beyond. And next, in November 9, architect Suchi Reddy, who leads a highly interdisciplinary practice in New York City, will present work covering a vast range of scale from industrial design to landscape architecture. Through these 4 lectures, architecture will be revealed as an open-ended discipline that allows graduates of all types of paths and opportunities to develop themselves, pursue an ideal or faith, help the world and fellow human beings, and more. The hope is that this lecture series will help you and all of us, really, faculty included, to consider such opportunities. Now, before I introduce the speaker, I would like to recognize the Walton family that makes all this possible. I also want to say, as I always do, Kate Sullivan for her support and doing all this, without which we couldn't do this, and Paula as well. Those professionals that are attending and are in the audience that want to receive AIA continuing education credits, please send an email with your name and your number, AI number, and I'll write my email in case you don't know it, and I will be able to provide you with 1.5 credits. But again, your name and your AI number. Now, we are recording this, as you know. We forgot to mention in the last time, but we should now remind you that if you choose to have your video on, you will be recorded. So if you wish not to be recorded, please shut down your video and stay online just to listen. We're not going to do any weird things, so don't worry about it. But legally, we have to inform you of that staying is consensual. Now, regarding tonight's Q&A, we're going to do the same thing as we did last time. So just to remind you, our Professor Douglas Palladino will be the moderator, and the procedure that will follow, please write the question you're going to have for Jenni in the chat room area, and don't wait until the very end to write your question, because Douglas cannot process all this in the 2 minutes that he needs to start asking this question to Jenni. So please do that. And that's that. So let me now introduce Jenni, who's in Helsinki, and we are so happy to have you here. And it's late, it's 11 o'clock p.m. there. Jenni Reuter is an associate professor in architectural principles and theory at Aalto University in Helsinki, in Finland. She also works as a practicing architect, both in her office and together with architects Saija Holmen and Helena Sandman. The group started their collaboration in 1995 with a Women's Center project in Rufisque, Senegal. They work in Finland as well as with several underprivileged communities around the world. At the moment, they are designing dormitories for girls in the Iringa region in southern Tanzania. In 2007, they founded the NGO Ukumbi, the mission of which is to offer architectural services to communities in need. Their work has been honored with both national and international awards and have been published and exhibited widely, among others at the Venice Art Biennale and the Venice Art Biennale several times. Jenni has, since 2001, been lecturing and teaching in universities and institutions around the world. We are so happy to have you tonight, Jenni, and the lecture she's going to be giving is entitled Equality and Quality. Equality, Quality. Welcome, Jenni, to CUA.
Thank you. Thank you, Reuter, for the nice words. Thank you, all of you, for coming here. It's the first time in my life I'm giving a lecture in the middle of the night. So I hope you will stay awake and I will stay awake. And I hope we will have a nice journey together. Thank you for inviting me. It's really nice to be part of this series that seemed to be very interesting. I haven't been able to listen to the other ones because it's the middle of the night, but perhaps I will do the next time I get the invitation. I will start sharing my screen and start talking to you. Does it look okay?
Yes.
Good. Okay, so my talk is called Equality Quality. It's on cultural, social, and technical sustainability. I will talk about projects I've been doing together with my two colleagues, Saija Holmen and Helena Sandman. And as Julio already said, we have worked together since '95, so for quite a while. We started when we were still students. And after that, we have been working on a very slow pace. We all do other things as well, but we have been slowly doing projects together. When we started, we had no role models. We had never heard about anyone working in the way we do, that we tried to find the fundraising ourselves and execute buildings in places where they have no architects and have no possibilities to use ones. I don't know how big screens you have, and I'm really sorry for being non-inclusive, but I show this picture done by Alejandro Saero Polo in El Croquis, which is a good magazine if you're not familiar with it. They have interesting theme numbers, and in this number in 2016 they were publishing this political compass of architecture firms throughout the world, and they were posing us in different genres. And we were put, here is Holmen, Reuter, Sandman, on the border between activists and material fundamentalists. And just to make you understand the map a bit clearer, on the other side, the opposite side, there are the populists. And for example, Big Bjarke Inga's group is just kind of the most populist according to this map. But it was interesting. We were invited and we didn't know what the groups would be and where they will place us. But somehow we were putting in a context through that map some years ago. And we also got a way, they were defining the activists like this. I've underlined some things that are quite close to what we are, how we think. We are drawing resources sometimes from arts grants, academic research, community funding, and on occasion, entrepreneurial devices. And we are also kind of occupying a space between social activism, installation and architecture, and quite often we are on the border between art, academia, and architecture. So this is how Alejandro Saero Polo put the activists, and we can somehow relate to that. But as said, when we started as young students, we had no group and no role models to work on. Later on, much later, we funded our NGO called the Kumbi Meeting Place in Swahili, where we have nowadays several groups of architects working in the same way. We have projects all over the world. This is where I'm right now, up in Helsinki. Sorry for being non-inclusive again. Your country is not even on this map. This is Senegal. I will talk about 4 projects today. 1 in Senegal, 1 in Egypt, and 2 in Tanzania, 1 in northern Tanzania and 1 in southern Tanzania. I will leave the others away. I will start with the first project of ours, that was how and why we started with what we were doing. As said, we were still students. We went there with a course and we started to get grants and go back and started to get to know the culture. And we did it as a student work, and then we felt it was such an important project, so we started to do it for real. We went several times to Senegal and got to know the infrastructure, the culture, and started to have get some fundraising, both from Senegal and from Finland. Senegal is a Muslim country, and at that time we were quite young, 3 female architects. So there were lots of obstacles, or in every project we are working with, having lots of obstacles, but that's kind of very inspiring as well. We got to know the culture as well as we could by inviting ourselves into homes and getting to know people. And we worked very closely with these women we were designing for. We got to know that they were coming from the countryside and moved into the city, and they didn't have the network of family infrastructure that they had before. So these women were actually quite alone in their new city. When we started to plan for them, we visited their homes where they originally came from the countryside, and we measured them and tried to understand the hierarchy of the building. This is oops, now it's just kind of typical Wolof house with a central courtyard and a wall around, a small wall preventing when you come in, you can't see the whole courtyard at once, but when you pass this small wall, you see the courtyard. And then there's several backyards where you have the kitchen, you have the laundry, and you still can have several wives in Senegal, so there are like huts for each wife. This hierarchy we used later on in our project as well. I will talk about that soon. We also studied satellite maps. This was before Google Earth, and we recognized this is our women's center, and we got the site for free, and we understood why this happened after the first rainy season when all of this was all wet. And we also understood that these canals were actually open sewage canals that went, if they would have worked, they went directly to the sea. But we also saw that the same hierarchy as we saw on the countryside also existed in the city. So there's a courtyard and a bigger courtyard and several backyards. The same way of building we had in our own project, with a big courtyard being the living room and a wall around, a small wall preventing from the site when you came in, and then several backyards with their own more intimate activities. We work a lot with models. This is quite a late model in a big scale, but when we start, we have those cardboard models that we throw apart, and we have glue with us, and we really discuss through models. There's lots of reasons for that. One is just that it feels much more real than drawings, and we often work with people that have no education, and quite often they don't know how to read or write. So, and quite often we have no common language. This woman spoke French, as we also do, so we communicated in French with her, but none of these others spoke Serer and Wolof and other local languages. Sorry, this mouse is living its own life. Yeah, so we work through models a lot, and we think that's also somehow a way of showing that a dream will come true one day. This was the site before we started to build anything there. The area is called Guya Aldeana. It's the paradise of the baobab, and the baobab is a holy tree in Senegal. This is a baobab tree, and the area was a garbage place and even a public toilet area before we built there. So people were really happy there came a public building there. The baobab we were able to keep. This is the same baobab after the building was built, and the same one here again. Here you see one of the indirect entrances and the other, where this water post is preventing, so you can't see the courtyard living room immediately. We were happy to be able to work in a country where the trees grow very quickly. We come from Finland, and where the trees grow quite slowly, but here we had understood that they grow quickly, and our idea was that this open yard would be continued from this big part to that through the courtyard, so that you could open all of these and keep that open. And after 3 years this had happened, and we were really happy that it worked as we wished. The same happened with the backyards. This is the kitchen backyard and laundry backyard and the toilets behind here. And also that in 3 years it just kind of moved into this shady, wonderful small paradise. We worked intensely together with these women from the very beginning. That's always our way of working, that we work only with locals, and the activities are there already before we come, so that we really can have an activity and a building that will stand even after we have left. So we got to know what they are will do in the coming building, and studied that and tried to do spaces to accommodate all the activities that were already there. There's a small restaurant also in the building. And then there's a kindergarten that was a complete, something we didn't really understand that it will happen, because we were a bit naive when talking to the women. They said that they would like to have a kindergarten, and we thought it's a Western way of looking at family and taking care of children, that in the Senegalese family there's always a grandmother or someone who will take care of the children. But we didn't really think about the fact that these came from the countryside and they left their families there, so they didn't have that social structure that they usually have in these families. So actually the kindergarten is one of the most important activities they have there today. They also have a school for dropouts, school kids. We have an idea of always working with the local materials, and we would like them to be as sustainable as possible. We tried out some local earth that wasn't suitable for buildings, so when we got the cement for free from the biggest cement factory of West Africa, that was situated in Rufisque itself, we decided to do these bricks with low percentage of cement, but cement anyway, which is not that sustainable. But then we also got the recycled metal for free. We, at that time, now afterwards, it's strange to even imagine how naive we were and how lucky we were, because we just heard that there's some recycled metal bars that they do in a factory, and we went there. We knocked on the door and to the factory and asked that, would you like to donate some of it? And they did. They perhaps were so astonished about these strange people doing these kind of things, so we were happy to have it done. With the detailing and the architecture as a whole, we wanted to be as rooted as possible in the place. And also the color was some investigation about this iron oxide that they have used there. That it's a bit similar actually to a color we have for these wooden buildings here in Finland, but here it's mixed with lime. We wanted the building first to be gray as all the others here, but we learned that from the women that they really wanted to be shown that they have enough money and will paint the whole thing and not have only the colors inside as we thought. But we also learned that you have to pay taxes if you have a ready building, so that's why they don't often paint their buildings. All the doors and windows are done of recycled metal just next door, and they are used in the building. One new detail that we introduced in this building was this roof out of corrugated iron that you always have when you have a bit of money. You want to show off and have corrugated iron, but you know when it's a hot climate, it gets really, really hot with that kind of a roof. So we wanted to have some insulating layer, and we did it out of straw mat, which is the local way of doing it in the countryside. So we combined these two and had a ventilation in between that worked quite well and also made a good acoustics in the inner space. Recycling is another thing that is always important to have, but it's not so easy to introduce in a country where a poor country where you have to recycling and you see recycling everywhere. So when we started to introduce it, we were thinking that we want to show that it's recycled. But when we came to the building site, they had painted everything, and we asked, like, why did you do this? And they just said that it's more harmonious like this. And they were right. It's always important to do the recycling in a way that is sophisticated to the local culture in the right way. So these are ventilation openings to the toilets. And then we use these beer bottles to have glass bricks in the wall. We didn't really think about the fact that our contractor was a severe Muslim, and we just chose those kind of bottles because they were the biggest ones. I actually have one here. You can see that it's really big. It's like extremely big bottle. So that's why we chose it. And we didn't think about the cultural issue that, of course, a severe Muslim don't want to have his car filled with empty beer bottles. But at the end, he just laughed about it. But there's 2 half beer bottles that we put together and got this effect of glass bricks that get a nice feeling of the facades in the nighttime. At the opening, that was the moment we understood that, or had the feeling that this will be a success, because quite often these kind of projects, somebody from far come and think that these people need this kind of things, and then it never really turned out that these will be used. They stand empty or in many cases it's so corrupted, so the wrong people are using it and so on. But we did have these people involved in the project from the very beginning. They gave donations. The children of these women and the husbands were building it and so on. So at this opening party, we were already kind of gone. They said there were 3 women helping around, but they were talking in Wolof and Serer and sometimes some words in French. So we somehow understood we were not needed anymore. And I think that was the nicest moment, because being thankful is not a very powerful feeling on the long run. So we didn't want them or us to be thankful. We wanted to have the power of that building continued. And this was in 2001, and the building is still in the right use with these women. I will show a short video of the women of the building. This is done 4 years ago, so it's fairly new.
maa ngi sant yàlla ndax depuis ba ma fi nekk ba léegi maa fi toog sama wërsëg maa ngi tudd Kati Saw aw ma jëkkër dafa décédé am naa doom 8 doos am naa juróom fukki at ak juróom benn jàmm ak salaam bu ñu xëyee daal 6 heures du matin ñun ñoo fi ñëwatu ñun ñi dëkk quartier Guet Ndar ñun ñooy bokk heure parce que dañuy xaarante 6 heures la ñuy agsi fii 6 heures du matin ba 6 heures du soir maa ngi tudd Jaara Jóob maa ngi dëkk Dëggal Dë si Tëngéej am naa borom kër am naa juróom-ñetti bant sama rôle mooy su fekkente ne commande dafa am bu ñu defaree ba pare waaw am na lu mu yokk sama koom-koom ndax lu ma fi jëlee dinaa ko jël bokk ko ak sama njaboot xëj na la ba ñu commencé metti woon na waaye fi mu ne sant yàlla alhamdulilah sama yaram it su ma ñëwee fi liggéey moo ma gënal ma toog si kër dara ñu di wax daal si tabax bi ñu ko tabax baax na rafet na wax dëgg yàlla ndax dañuy gis ñoo xamante ne dañ koy gis si internet rek fexe ba ñëw fi di laaj fan ñu kër gi fonk nekk te mooy adresse bi kon bu mu meloon rek bi sa yoon continuer noonu parce que loolu mooy adresse bi de Ndeye Marème Niang dëkk Tëngéej lébu am je suis veuve en même temps ñaari doom bu góor ak bu jigéen de 59 ans sama rôle si centre bi may secrétaire général en tant que secrétaire général bu ñu di liggéey bu liggéey bi jaar yoon man dama koy suivre di ko seet sama liggéey si centre am naa si jàngat bu baax a baax a baax ndax su ma xëyee suba ñëw liggéey si dinaa sawar pour liggéey di liggéey sama yaram daal dinaa sentir na sama yaram sawar ñu yëgaloon ñu si kaw dindal ñu li nga xam ne mooy ardoise defal kuleel ñu ko autorisé ak escalier yoo xamante ni bu suñu liggéey bare dinañ mën a yéegal ay taabu si kaw di ko si yoon
I hope it worked okay for you. The film didn't lag too much. The building is, as I said, still in use, quite worn out, but that's how it's over there quite often. They have actually built a bit more even in the courtyard as an architecture, perhaps not that happy about all of these, but for the activity it's needed. The next project is a learning center in Cairo. It's in the middle of the garbage collectors. So you see, this is the whole, the building site, and there's 1 meter, that's somehow 3 feet of garbage just before you come to the ground. So you can imagine how much garbage there is all over that place. This is perhaps the picture you have of Egypt, but the fact is, of course, the reality quite different. Our site is situated up by the mountain. This is the center of Cairo, with the Coptic people, the Christian people in Cairo. It's on the border with the Coptic people. So this learning center is it's not connected to any religion. But we got a site with lots of trees, which was a problem for us because we didn't want to take down any trees from the site, because it looks like this where we worked. It also looks like this when you zoom closer. It's a bit like a factory of recycling. So you recycle the garbage of the whole of Cairo in the street, and then you live upstairs. Quite amazing to see this and to understand that it actually works. We see how they recycle different colors of different plastic and make it into a material they can make cloth out of. And the materials that they don't use for anything, or they can't realize what kind of material it is, they melt together and do tiles like this out of it. So it's quite a factory of recycling. And the activity, again, it existed before we came, or this building is not built yet because there's the revolution going on in Cairo, and we have some practical problems with that, but we are working together with this organization where they recycle. For example, they are making rug mats out of cloth. When we know that the history of Egypt is long and there's lots of different cultures and religions in the history, we wanted still to somehow pick up some things that were very typical for the area. So we visited this, many others, but this, for example, a traditional Egyptian house, to get some details that I will talk about a bit later. This is one of these models that I talked about, the crappy models that we use when we design this. It's just an example how we do it, and we have the glue and the cardboard with us, and we discuss about them. Of course, we do all the drawings as well. The plan is such, so we have left so many trees as possible. And here is a later model, quite a big scale model that we've done. Every room have a certain color, and to give the identity and the acoustics for the room, we have used these rug mats that they are doing themselves and have them in the ceiling of each room. And the doors also give the color of the room. In the windows, we are using these mashrabeyas this is in a traditional house. You have these to shade, but also for the fact that in those days, the women couldn't be seen to the street, so they could look out, but they were not seen from the outside. We are doing collaboration with the American University in Cairo, they have been doing quite a lot of research on different new materials because of the wood and recycled wood, because you can't use this hardwood anymore. It's not sustainable. Again, we work with locals. This is the local engineer who wasn't too sure about the fact that we would use natural ventilation. And he said he could ask his grandfather about it, and you can just imagine how much his grandfather could help at this moment. So quite often we have these low-tech and local materials that we want to introduce, and it's not always at all very easy. Here we use the very local material, the stone, of which the pyramids are also done. And we did it into this ventilated wall. We also have recycled glass in these walls, and some mosaics that the children have been drawing. I show a short film out of this one as well.
ايه افضل حاجه بتحبها في المنطقه؟
انا بحب الدراسه.
تتمنى تطلعي لما تكبري؟
مدرس.
Täällä nyt sijaitsee Kairossa, Mokattomin kaupunginosassa, joka on Zambaleenien ruskiinkeräjien yhteisö.
Sehän oli ihan huikea kokemus, koska koko tämä kaupunginosa on niinku kierrätystehdas.
Tämä rakennus on suunniteltu sellaiselle järjestölle kuin APE.
APE is an Egyptian non-governmental organization that was founded in 1984 to work among garbage collectors in the city of Cairo.
نفسكم تبقوا ايه بعد ما تكبر؟ نفسك تكملي تعليم مثلا، نفسك تاخدي الشهاده، نفسك تبقي ايه؟ دكتور؟
Niillä oli jo suunnitelma tähän paikkaan. Paikallinen arkkitehti oli laittanut iso pötkö tähän niin, että kaikki isot puut olisi jouduttu kaatamaan. Ja sitten se oli vaan semmoinen niin kuin tyyppikoulutyyppinen, niin ne halusi jotain vähän egyptiläisempää ja sitten pyysi 3 suomalaista arkkitehtiä siinä.
Tässä on siis 3 osaa tässä rakennuksessa. Tämä on päiväkotiosa ja siinä on 8 luokkahuonetta. Tämä on siis pääsisäänkäynti tuolta päin. Ja tämä on toimistotalo ja aikuiskoulutus. Täällä on muutama luokka ja sitten on toimisto alakerrassa. Ja täällä on tämmöinen kattoterassi, mitä voi käyttää myös juhliin ja sitä voi vuokrata ulos. On aika yleistä, että kattoja käytetään tähän tarkoitukseen. Ja siitä on sitten yhteys tähän iltapäiväkoulurakennukseen, jossa on sitten enemmän kerroksia ja aika paljon luokkahuoneita, jossa sitten on omat pienet takapit.
Fasaadimateriaali on paikallista kiveä, mutta sitä on käytetty pitkään, pyramidit on tehty siitä.
Tällä alueella on kehitelty kierrätystä todella pitkään. Pyritään tämän kierrätyksen esiin nostamisen kautta nostamaan myös Zambaleenien asemaa sillä tasolla, että se mitä he tekevät siellä saisi niin kuin arvostusta.
Paikallisesti on käytetty aika paljon mosaikkeja. Siellä missä pestään kädet, niin tehdään näistä paikallisten lasten piirustuksista semmoisia isoja mosaikkeja.
Now we come to Tanzania, the last, there was 2 projects in Tanzania. I will talk about the first one being a shelter house for victims of domestic violence. It's situated in Moshi, that is just by the Kilimanjaro mountain. And the Kilimanjaro mountain is, if the weather is good, you can see the snow on the top of the Kilimanjaro from the city itself. Again, we were in a complete different, Africa is huge and all these cultures, different cultures are very different from each other, of course. And we had another project in the same city. I will talk about that one now. It was an orphanage, and already at that time we had the possibility to stay quite a lot of time, or longer periods there, and we started to study the culture, the hierarchy of common space, private space, public space, in between space, the scale, and how you use courtyards. We also studied, of course, once we got the site, we studied that. We studied it together with the Kvieko personnel, and we did quite a lot of map studies about the site. We also used, as in every project, we worked together with local architects, and this is a drawing by one of the local architect, how the hut where he came from, and there's some features that we took from this one that we also used in our own projects. And also we did quite some research on the local Swahili house and how the veranda is an important feature when you come into the courtyard and having the backyard, and then again the more private laundry and kitchen in the backyard. This is one of these verandas that they have. We went through quite a lot of different material options, also finding this interesting brick that we couldn't use in this project, but in the next one. We wanted to use biogas, which would have been a very important energy saving source, but we couldn't because there was a cultural crash about the fact that can you use manure to cook, for example, would that have an awful, would it be stinky to make food on that kind of gas? But some of the new low-tech features we could use was this heating up the water with this very low-tech water tanks. This is the view from the site if it's a nice, good weather. And we wanted to keep that view. The Kilimanjaro is, you can see it from here. This is, unfortunately, this is not completely built either. This higher part, this two-story part to the street is not built, but it's only because of money issues, it's only this lower part in the courtyard that we have been able to build here. Is one of the early models with both parts. This is the built part. This is we're still trying to get fundraising for this one. And this is a bigger model where you also can see the openings for the natural light in the roof. Here you see the higher part that is not built, but the lower part is built and it's filled with rooms for these victims. Some building sites pictures. Here you can also see how we use the bamboo on the doors. And once again, these bottle walls, this time it was wine bottles and not beer bottles. And some color samples. We tried out quite a lot there. And then this main gate where they always have this kanga, this like from a local cloth, and there's a Swahili text that would be in English more or less, equal rights for all is the basis of development. So this is the gate when built. And the ready building, here you can see the natural light coming in. And some of the bottles in the bathrooms. And banana leaves this time in the roofs, and the natural light coming into the rooms. A film again.
Baada ya mtu ujauzito amekimbia akawa mawasiliano hamna, yaani kama vile napenda kuchanganyikiwa kuenda mojawapo kichwani. Dada mmoja akamshauri akaja hapa, alipokuja hapa wamalize.
Kuhusiana na jengo, kweli jengo ni zuri, linavutia, jambo la kwanza. Na pili pia ni ninapofanya kazi katika hili eneo najisikia kuwa na amani, maana sehemu imetulia, ina utulivu. Hata wateja wanapokuja hapo wanajisikia raha kukaa katika hili eneo kwa kweli na utulivu.
Katika hapo mnaamko kiambiana mara kwa mara, anakunywa pombe na mlevi, ngombe nyumbani mna amani. Ndio 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 kwa jinsi.
Jengo ni zuri, linasaidia sana. Kama tuko na shida tunapata tunalala, Mungu awezeshe wapate kuongeza labda mzuri sababu tunakuwa
Kutoka tukio la mtoto amebakwa, nilichukua hatua na kwenda kituo cha polisi. Nilipofika kituo cha polisi, mtoto nilipeleka hospitali na nipata vipimo. Baada ya kupata vile vipimo, mtoto alifikia pia kulazwa hospitalini. Alipolazwa hospitalini, niliendelea kukaa na matibabu. Ikiwa pia alianza kufanya pesa za kumsaidia mtoto. Ndipo nilipojaribu kutafuta msaada. Baada ya kutafuta msaada, nilikutana na mama nilikuta Jenni Maria. Akaniambia nijaribu kwenda kumwambia anaweza akanisaidia.
Nashukuru sana, ni nzuri, lina mvuto, limejengwa katika mandhari mazuri. Pia ni ilivyo katika ilivyojengwa kufurahisha.
And the last one for today, Girls Hostel Nyangoro, Tanzania. The project we are working on right now, the first one is built. The second one will be actually, they will give it to, or should be ready this week. So we are getting some WhatsApp messages every day from the building site. But the first one, as said, is already built, and it's for girls connected to a school, or every one of these is connected to different schools. We are starting with the third one of these already. We had some workshops together with the girls about colors, and also workshops together with the village leaders from the area to get the project rooted. It's a safe space for these girls. They have, this organization is an English-British organization we are working with, and they have been doing lots of dormitories that have been cheap, as well as this is cheap, but they have been like 80 girls in one big room, and now in this new model they get more privacy for each room, and they also are much more fire safe and more sustainable in the way of using of material. We wanted to use earth again in the building, but they had already, on the building site, this is the building site before the building was built, they had been doing, the village leaders had brought some burnt bricks, and we also here were able to use these interlocking blocks that use no mortar. So we made the blocks on the site. And also, this is some lunch, and then we dried the blocks on site. the foundation out of natural stone, and then we could do these ventilated walls out of these blocks. This is the first building. We then did some research to get together with a National Housing Board of Tanzania that have been doing these blocks, and now we are doing these 3 whole blocks, so you can do these longer spans of ventilated walls. This is Saya on the building site. The first one being built, being ready. There was quite a lot of problems with the execution of that one, and now this week we hope we will get a better version of this one. But we are working with very good people there, and even through, though the pandemic means that we can't travel there, we get news from there all the time, which is one of the wonderful things with the internet working nowadays. I will end with some pictures of the Venice Biennale where we were in 2016, showing some of our projects. We are working slowly, we are working with few projects, but we still think we somehow have an impact. Thank you. I'm really happy to answer questions as well.
Thank you, Jenny. You can hear our applause, but
sharing.
Douglas, hopefully you have received some questions from the students. He will now the Q&A.
Yes, I have. Claire DeMarco asks that you spoke about sourcing local material. A number of the questions have to do with the sort of local technology of building. Claire asks, you spoke about sourcing local materials for the project. What was the process that you used for selecting these materials and finding out what materials were available, especially in the case of the recycled materials that you used? And how does this process change from location to location, for instance, in Senegal, Cairo, and Finland projects?
Yeah, it's always important that when you use recycled materials, that they are leftover materials, that they are not, for example, when we use bottles, we have to be sure that they are not bottles you can get money out of if you recycle them, because then there's no idea of recycling them, because then they have a working system already. But yeah, we try to find out materials that are out there and would be able to use. And of course, the more time we have to spend, when we started, we were still didn't have children and didn't have work. We were studying and could stay there for longer times. Nowadays we have a different life situation, but nowadays we are perhaps a bit more professional in many ways, I hope. So now we can also have good partners that we work with. So yeah, I don't know if I answered the question. I think there has to be a lot of study behind it, but also a lot of imagination and kind of new ways of thinking. So many of these ideas, the bottle idea, for example, we have seen like whole bottles, but we hadn't seen any of those that were combining, getting the best out of it. So that this is empty, by the way, and coming from Senegal, so don't be thinking that I'm kind of drinking here all the time. This is just cut in the middle, and you could combine two and have quite a thick wall with two of them.
Yeah, another one of the questions regarding the materials was particular interest in the banana leaves. Was that a local material that they were using in the area? And does it work well? And that leads into Claire Ben's question. Are there ever unforeseen problems when you use these local materials, like, you know, local soil and concrete or banana leaves, and how do you address those after the project is done?
Yeah, first of all, I have to say that since we always work with locals and local architects, and they have usually, the local architects, if there are any, they have got their education in a Western school usually, and they have always said, like, even the same thing happened in both Tanzania and Senegal, that they could never do this because they would be regarded as like crazy, because they think since they have an education, they should do the Western thing. And everybody, if they pay for an architect, they want to have the Western thing. But since we are already coming from the Western country, we are kind of allowed, or we are crazy anyway, so we could kind of introduce these new things. And of course, there's lots of, every material, I think in every culture, it's always difficult to have a new material. But usually, sometimes, for example, with the bamboo, there wasn't a tradition of using bamboo, but we know that in many parts of the world where there is, and they have bamboo growing. But with the banana leaves and also the straw mat, it existed, but it was considered material for the poor. So I think what we try to do is the fact that we show that what's already there is actually very valuable, and that the architecture shouldn't be the same all over the world, that the regionalism of every part of the world should really be shown in the architecture, and it's more sustainable, and it's more interesting also, because I think that no one would like the architecture to be the same all over the world, even though that's happening.
Yeah, fascinating. Mo Orbach asks that a big concern in the typical US domestic violence shelter is anonymity and confidentiality. Was this also a factor in Tanzania? And if so, how did you integrate those imperatives?
Yeah, it's always a bit difficult to think about showing that video I showed, because of course these victims are talking quite openly about what they have been going through, but we were working with professionals that said that this is kind of okay, and we are not, of course, showing those in the wrong circumstances. But the question was you compared it to the American. No, I didn't get that.
In the US, a shelter being anonymous and privacy is always paramount in the concern. And I think the question was, is that true also? And were you able to do that there? Yeah,
they had, I think there's always a problem with those shelter houses, because if they have if they have victims, also those that are doing the crime can come to the shelter. So you have to be clear about the fact that the shelter is safe in that way, and also that you can come there without the others knowing. But how it was before we did that building, it's an old organization again that we worked with, and they are giving legal aid for these victims, and they have been giving it for 20 years. And they gave the aid, but then the victims had to go back where they came from. And you can just imagine that it's actually usually getting worse if you first go and ask for help, and you perhaps get it with the going to court and so on, but then you have to go back to where you came from. So the shelter is here actually being a place where they really can sort out their problems. But I think the shelter house is always different cultures, different situations, but the idea is the same, that you can feel safe and you can get help, and you can go away from where the crime is happening.
A lot of the questions revolve around this issue of being the helicopter architect, right? Going to some place that is not your home. How do you learn from the locals? We talked about materials. How do you connect with them and learn what they want, and be able to do something that is, as you said, want to be appropriate to be local, but still maybe bring in new thinking and avoid the sort of issues. I actually had a thesis student here at Catholic University who, before she came to architecture school, was in the Peace Corps and talked about working in Africa, and that there was a Peace Corps project that built a well for the women so they wouldn't have to walk to the river. And they never used it because walking to the river and getting the water and washing the clothes was an opportunity for self. So those issues of really learning the local, and you're doing it in an extreme way. I mean, architects, we do this all the time. If I do a project in New York, it's a little different, but you're doing it in an extreme way. How do you do this?
Yeah, there's always, of course, lots of possibilities for it going wrong. And I have to say, we have lots of projects we have left halfway, or we have for some reason understood that this won't work. And that's, for an architect, it's like you want to have your things built. And once this orphanage I didn't talk about today, we had everything, we had all the details, everything done, but we couldn't build it because the orphanage, the head of the orphanage, we understood he won't be able to carry this out in a good way. The children will be the victims. And then we had to, there was an organization behind, an American organization actually with this project. And they decided together with us that we won't do this, that we have to leave it. And as a designer, you have to be also quite kill your darlings in that sense, that you understand that you can't like just wanting to have your building, but that wanting to have your building it's what architects tend to do, and that's the glossy pictures that people quite often. There's also, I don't know if you have that kind of courses in your schools, but there's quite many schools, architecture schools throughout the world that have these courses. They go and think they are going and help vulnerable people, and they are building something, and they are taking these nice pictures, and they are having them in reviews, and it looks wonderful. But once they have left, they stand empty, and that's kind of the worst thing you can do. That also the fact that you build yourself, you think that you're helping, but quite often there's lots of locals that would like to build and would like to get paid for that. So I think these cultural issues, you should be very, very careful when you work with vulnerable people, because it's so, and especially when you come with the money as well, because you can misuse the situation and so easily. And I'm sure we have done lots of mistakes as well by doing the wrong things, but we have also been doing the right things.
Colleen Dougherty asks, you mentioned you were inspired by your teachers to become interested in doing this type of work. Could you say a little more about how your education was and what was the focus of the studios? What countries were usually included in your study abroad?
Yeah, I personally, I studied did most of my studies in Helsinki, and I was 1 year abroad in Paris. But during I think the reason why I'm an architect, it wasn't there could have been lots of other options as well. But the reason why I really started to get interested in architecture was through our professor, Juhani Pallasmaa, who was my professor. He was actually having the same professorship I have nowadays. That is, for the first years, quite active professorship. So he was very inspiring, and the way he understood architecture as being so much more than what we really first think of. That was eye-opening for me. And then this course was not led by him, where we went to Senegal. That was another kind of course, but it led me into that. But I think that could have happened even perhaps without that course. My mother was living in Namibia for some years, and I was there quite a lot, and then different cultures always been interested. I've been interested in that. So it could have gone otherwise, but I'm happy I had quite a lot of nice study mates and good teachers, and had the opportunity to try out. I've always done, still do, try to only do things I really like. And that's have been my way of, people afterwards say that how come you did that and that and that, and afterwards it's of course very easy to see somehow why things happen, but when they are some things that are in coming, then I really, the older I get, the easier it is to follow my gut feeling and do things I like. Of course, they are hard to do. It's not that I would only do easy things, but I try to really enjoy what I'm doing, because otherwise I think someone else would do it better.
Julio has a question about gender and some of the challenges that you've had. I'm going to let his voice ask that question. Julio?
No, I was wondering how gender has played in your career and your practice and in your teaching, if at all. You mentioned at the beginning that because you're 3 women coming to these countries, you face challenges, but you also managed to deal with them. In our student body is more of 50-50 right now. I'm very aware of the importance of this other perspective that you bring strongly to architecture. And by the way, thank you for mentioning Juhani Palasma, because Juhani talked with me here 10 years ago about, and through him, actually, I get you. So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah,
he's, I actually saw him by kind of accident today when I was out for lunch. I saw he passed by. He lives close to my office, and I saw him. So if I would have said that I will meet you today, he would have been happy, but we didn't meet, but I was having lunch and he was walking by, and he's still in good shape, even though he's way over 80. Gender, yes, it's an issue that is often difficult to discuss, because people very easily want to misunderstand and misinterpret what you say and how you say it. The female professors at our department are the first in the history. So I hope that, and nowadays we have several of us, but we are the first in the history. So I hope that our students won't think that there's an issue about it and that there's a big change happening, but still in most parts of the world, on all important positions, they're still men, but it's changing and it's going to the better all the time, I think. But I think only through being very clear about things and being professional, it can change, and not trying to stop when you see that there's things that are not right. And of course, as a female, trying to be as good example as possible for those coming. And I quite often, I think that in our academic environment, we are already, it's quite good, but still out in the field, quite often I have female students that after having graduated, they come back to me and they say that, why didn't you tell that it's like this out there? And then I think as a teacher, you should never be cynical. You should never be like, you can be critical, but not negative. So I think that if you foster a new generation that wouldn't see these problems, they can also perhaps be a part of the change. So, but it's a very male dominated world, and it's the whole building industry and the engineering is very male dominated. So I think there's a change, and I have never really had big troubles with being female, and I haven't really thought of that. I actually have a colleague that said to me that, you know, that 10 years ago you said there's no difference. And I have to, unfortunately, I have to say that when becoming older and seeing more, there's still some problems out there, but they will be fixed soon if we work for them, if we all work for them.
It was wonderful. I was having a conversation with one of my students right before this about the diversity of architectural practice. And I think your lecture demonstrates that remarkably, that there's really nothing else I can think that anybody could do that has the diversity of paths that we can take. We have one more from Madison Schneider. She writes, your international connection to the community is very inspiring. How did you come upon the idea of the children's drawings becoming the mosaics for the Cairo project?
We wanted to involve the children that will be the coming users, of course, not those children, because it's a long process. So we wanted it to be seen, and then we had been, like, the mosaic is a local way of both very old mosaics you can see in Egypt, but also these new ones. So the technique is there, they can do it, and the children were there. And when you have no common language, then drawing is always easy, and children used to like to draw. And we took all the material with us from Finland, so we could have that workshop easily without any big organization. So it felt natural. And also the fact that they were quite easy to combine to a collage of all of them.
Thank you. Julia?
Thank you, Jenny. I think we are going to close the lecture now. We really appreciate your lecture and look forward to continue our communications with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Say hi to Johanni if you close the next time.
I will.
Thank you, everybody.
And good night. Thanks for staying up so late.
Yeah, I will go to sleep now.
No, you can't sleep now.
Thank you, Douglas. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you to all of you, the students out there. It's